Hello and welcome to the Reviews Brothers. It's been a running joke in gaming for years now that games based on movies have a pretty high risk of being terrible, but people kept buying them because they liked the movie, hey, me included. So it's a genre that has died down but is still around. Interestingly, it seems that more and more video games are getting based on movies now, but they tend to be ones that were popular in the 80s, and I'm more than okay with that. Now, I know this is a bit of a contentious topic because, yes, some of these properties have had movies released sort of recently, but you know what I mean. So that's what we're going to look at now. Some new-ish games based on old-ish movies. So how about I shut up, you press that subscribe button, and we take a look at some games. First up is Manos, The Hands of Fate. This is a very random film to get a game tie-in. The movie was released in 1966 and is often considered one of the worst films of all time. It tells the story of a family that gets lost on a drive and ends up getting tangled up in an underground devil-worshipping cult where the master likes sexy women, and your wife happens to be one. So the game sees you playing through the events of the film in a very tongue-in-cheek way. It knows it's based on a crappy movie, but the game is actually pretty fun. It's a 2D action platform game. You play as Michael, the hero dad, and you side-scroll your way through a bunch of levels that are packed with wildlife that wants you dead, as well as zombies, skeletons, werewolves, and more. Yes, liberties were taken with the enemies, but that doesn't matter. You can run, jump, and shoot, and you have a pistol as your main weapon, which has unlimited ammo, which is nice. You can also find a shotgun on pretty much every level, usually a few in fact. This is the only other weapon in the game, and it basically gives you a spread shot, which is handy as you can't crouch and some enemies are too low to shoot with your pistols. But if you take a single hit, you will lose the shotgun and go back to your pistol, so be careful. The levels take you through various scenes of the film, starting by finding somewhere to rest after you get lost. This of course is a creepy house where shit goes down. Then you explore the house until your dog and family are kidnapped, so you go through caves, graveyards and the desert until you find them. The levels have plenty of enemies to keep you busy, as well as having gems to collect. These just give you points though. You'll also find 1-ups and extra health hidden in the hand statues that you can shoot. If you see a glowing hand, make sure you collect it, as these give you an extra heart. There are sometimes more than one on a stage as well, so you might need to do some exploring and backtracking. These are often in hard to reach areas and you'll need to do some tricky platforming or have quick reflexes to get them. What's also fun is they've mixed up the levels. You do mostly get side-scrollers, but there is a shooter level here where you're flying a plane, and also a few auto-scrolling levels that help keep things interesting. And another thing I like is that the game has a load of references to other crap horror movies from the time, including the bird from The Giant Claw as a boss, as well as the 2 vampire zombie alien people things from Plan 9 from Outer Space, with UFOs being an enemy that appear later in the game. It was a really nice nod to the classic bad films. The graphics here, they're decent enough. It's all done in a very deliberate 8-bit style, but it does have lots of colour and the animation is just what it needs to be. I do really like the variety in enemies and levels as well here. The bosses in particular are really good fun. The controls are good and responsive too. Interestingly, this is the developer that would go on to make the Angry Video Game Nerd games, which you can really tell when playing this, though I believe this was the first game that he made. It is pretty basic and can be beaten pretty easily, but that's alright. It's a fun time and I enjoyed my playthrough. The Rocky Horror Show video game is also made by Freakzone, and I got them as a double pack on Steam for just a few quid. This time round you're playing through the events of the awesome Rocky Horror Show, which has basically got the same plot now I'm thinking about it. It's about a couple that get lost and end up in a house where the strange Dr. Frank Unferter, a crazy cross-dressing sex addict, is doing all kinds of strange experiments to make the perfect man. You get tied up in all of this, quite literally, and trapped in the house, and you have to find a way to escape, preferably while singing some incredibly catchy songs. It's another side-scrolling action game, but this time you get to control various different characters from the film. There's Brad and Janet as the main couple, as well as Dr. Scotty later on in the game. There's no guns here though, instead it takes a leaf out of Mario 2's book, where you'll need to pick things up and throw them at the various enemies in the game. Once again, they have of course taken liberties. You get zombies, flying skulls, which actually are taken directly out of the Manos game, complete with the sound effect that went with them. Picking things up is easy and it has pretty good hit detection, so I never found this a problem. You'll also need to use the things that you throw around to get around the levels, which are packed with moving platforms, deadly traps like spikes, and swinging axes, and of course bottomless pits. You'll need to use boxes to throw them on the spikes so you can walk over them, or to create a tower so you can get over a wall that's too high to normally jump across, that sort of thing. The game does a really great job of playing through the events of the movie, and you get quite a few cutscenes here. These include a lot of lines from the movie, as well as its own jokes, usually about the fact that you're playing a video game and it all makes no sense. Something that is odd though is that there's a strange glitch where if you're holding a box or something like that in a cutscene, you can try to throw it, but instead you just fall off the bottom of the screen and die. It happened every time for me, so if you are holding something in a cutscene, don't press the throw button, whatever you do. Something that's a little annoying is that the cutscenes can't be skipped, and they do take a while to get through with the text moving incredibly slowly. It would be fine, but if you die, sometimes you have to re-watch them again and again, and you've got to sit through 2 minutes of slow text that you've already read. But what is nice is that you get unlimited lives here. But it doesn't really matter because it's not a long game, so it does help to pad it out, I suppose. The levels take you through the various parts of the giant mansion, and what's cool is that you actually play through them with each of the characters, but they do change things up as to make them a bit harder, with more enemies being present and more spikes and traps to get in your way. It actually took me longer to realise than it probably should have done that they were even the same levels. They've done a really good job of mixing them up. But something you've got to love here is the music. It's all 8-bit versions of the tunes from the movie, and they sound great. Overall, this is just a fun game to play through. It's got some good humour and matches the tone of the film very well. The graphics are decent with the nice 8-bit representations of all the characters, and the controls are solid. How can we not take a look at Retro Realms and their new releases? We've got the double bundle, which includes Ash vs the Evil Dead and Halloween. These are some really cool action platform games based on their respective properties. You get to choose between Ash vs the Evil Dead or Halloween, though they are both loosely connected. In Ash vs Evil Dead, an evil demon has entered our realm looking to take the Necronomicon to fuel his power and take over all the realms. Of course, our hero Ash has the book and isn't going to have any of that, except the demon still steals it, and so Ash has to go get it back before the demon can take over all of the realms of the living and the dead. Luckily, the demon dropped an eyeball, which gives Ash the ability to switch between the realm of the living and the realm of the dead. Gameplay is simple. You have to get to the end of the level. Then you'll fight a boss and move on. But it's all done very well and the gameplay is solid. You can run, jump, wall jump, and you have a few attacks. Ash has his trusty chainsaw arm, which makes light work of most enemies, and you can also hold down your attack button for a strong attack. For Ash, that's his shotgun blast. Sorry, boomstick. You also get a secondary weapon, like throwing knives or candles and things like that. The levels are quite large and packed with enemies, and it's a lot harder than it looks. There's a ton of deadites everywhere in regular zombie variety, or flying bug things that reverse your controls, that I hate by the way, and there's spitting demons and so on. They're all fun to kill and will explode in a torrent of blood, and yes, this game does not skimp on the red stuff. There's plenty of platforming here, and you also want to look out for the collectibles on each level, which open up secrets and dioramas for you to look at and collect, which is always nice. Dead enemies also drop money. You can use this between levels to upgrade your health, ammo count, and how long you can stay in the Dead Realm, as you can't be there permanently. The Dead Realm is cool, but much harder. When you switch to it, it changes the world that you're in to a gross undead one full of blood and guts. There's a ton more enemies in the dead world, and what's more is they don't actually die. They'll just fall down and they will still drop money, but will always get back up. Also, the dead world has a slightly different layout, so you will need to switch to it at times to find hidden passages or platforms that aren't there in the regular world. Being in the demon world actually is really good for earning lots of money as well, but it can cost you your life. You do get unlimited lives, but you always start from the beginning of the level and will need to collect any items you did before, which is annoying. I gotta say, I do really like the boss fights here. It's the classic thing where you've got to learn their patterns, and I really did like fighting them. Most of them are a nod to their various respective properties as well. The backgrounds in levels are also really impressive, with loads going on all over the place. And then of course there's the Halloween game. Now, the story here is that the evil demon from the other game likes Michael Myers because he's a psycho killer. So he breaks him out of his mental asylum, gives him back his trusty knife, and gives him the power to enter the Dead Realm. Then Michael basically just has to go on a bender killing everyone, because why not? Now, the gameplay here is actually basically the same as Ash vs the Evil Dead, but the game is set in Haddonsfield rather than wherever Ash lives. You go through the hospital, the town, and so on. There's actually 4 characters that you can play as here. There's also Kelly Maxwell from Ash vs the Evil Dead series, and of course Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis's character from the Halloween movies. Each of the characters plays quite differently, with differing speed, attacks and special attacks that you can unlock for them, and they can all be used in either of the games, which is really cool, and they even have their own story which is different depending on which game you're playing the character in, giving this loads of replay value. As you can see, the game does look fantastic with a perfect retro style and some amazing animation. The controls are spot on. Ash is faster and more nimble, and Michael is slower, more lumbering powerhouse, and it is really noticeable that the characters aren't just reskins, which I kind of thought they would be. My only real problem with the game is its pretty high price point. You have to buy these games separately, and they're not cheap, especially considering the games are pretty short and you can probably play through them in just a couple of hours. There is a bundle with both, but it is still quite expensive for the amount of content. Still, I love the franchises, so I had to get it, and really I wasn't disappointed. This is a great retro style horror game that is perfect for Halloween and fans of the series. Next up is Puppet Master the game, based on the horror movie series that started in the late 80s, where evil Egyptian spells have brought back a bunch of puppets to life. Some are good, some are evil, and they each have their own powers and abilities. Now, I love the fact that the old obscure horror movies are getting games. It's just a shame that they're basically all exactly the same. So what you have here is what I think the kids are calling an asymmetrical multiplayer game. Basically, you've got a few teams, represented here by the puppet factions, as well as the human characters who have the job of trying to kill the puppets once and for all. So what you have to do here is choose your puppet, and then depending on the faction, this will determine the objectives you have on the handful of levels you can play. The objectives here are nothing crazy. You basically have to explore levels and find various things to destroy. These are things like statues or totems. Then you have to kill the other players and the human agents. Once that is done, you make your way back to your toy box and the level is over. Each of the puppets has its own stats and abilities, and they do play very differently from one another. It's actually really fun to try them all out. Some have projectile weapons like guns, some have knives or other sharp objects, or some just bite and claw at things. They also have their own special abilities that are specific to them, like the gunman being able to shoot really fast, the clown slug thing shooting poisonous stuff, and the woman having gross leeches that she spits at people. It was fun to try the different characters, and the problem is that the game is specifically meant to be played in multiplayer, preferably with 4 or more people, which is just never going to happen, let's face it. I did try joining some multiplayer games, but unsurprisingly there wasn't a single person playing. I was literally the only person on the servers for the whole time I was there, which was about 2 hours. Thankfully, there are tutorial levels, which are the only thing you can do in single player. But these get pretty dull pretty fast, as you're just wandering around large, open, empty levels on your own, looking for statues to smash. There is one agent on the stage as well, which is controlled by the computer AI, then you'll need to hunt them down and kill them. And this was actually kind of fun, as each character has its own kill animation that's pretty cool to see. It looks fine, the game was released in 2022, and to be fair, it's always been a free game to download. The character models for the puppets look good enough, but the humans are a bit ropey. I can imagine this probably would be quite good fun if you had a lobby filled with your friends, which I guess would be possible as it's free. You just need to convince them to get it. But I've never been a fan of these multiplayer type games. I find them all kind of dull, and they all seem to be basically the same with a couple of cosmetic changes here and there. So I wouldn't really recommend this one unless you can get a bunch of friends to play it. Otherwise, you'll probably be like me and be the only person on the damn thing. And speaking of games like this, here is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre being played here on the PS5. It is based on the genuinely unsettling film about a cannibal family that abducts and tortures a group of teens. And yes, the game here is another one of those asymmetrical multiplayer games where you're playing as either a member of the inbred murderous family or the survivors. If you're a survivor, you start tied up and you need to free yourself and explore the house and surrounding environment to find the items that let you escape and run away. If you're a member of the family, then you want to kill the survivors before they escape. Simple. So basically, it's the same as all those other games like Friday the 13th that came out a few years ago, and the most recent Evil Dead game, which I was going to include here, but I just couldn't be bothered to play it if I'm honest. Anyway, playing this one is exactly what you'd expect. It's kinda slow and pretty boring. Now, on paper it should be tense because you're either hiding from people who want to kill you and are actually pretty efficient at doing so, or you're a killer hunting prey. But what it means really is that you're spending the whole time looking in cupboards to see if anyone's hiding there or hiding in the long grass. Basically, you spend a large chunk of the time literally not seeing anyone else. I mostly played as the killers, and even this was kind of boring. There are a few to choose from, and I do like that you can actually choose who you play as rather than being randomly assigned someone, and each character has their own abilities, like being able to track, which highlights footprints, or being able to add padlocks to doors, set various traps, sabotage things, or even poison items that survivors might pick up. But it's just that none of these things ever seemed particularly useful on the rare occasions that I did find a survivor. This meant that I just relied on running around and stabbing, but even this just felt a bit crap. Your attacks just feel weak and there's no impact when they connect. I guess this is to give survivors a chance to escape, but it felt like I was attacking with a wet cloth rather than a knife. Of course, between matches, which by the way always must have 7 players in them, you can spend ages just waiting in lobbies. This is another issue I have with games like this. It's pretty presumptuous that you'll have a good enough player base to constantly fill it up. Now, to be fair, I did get to play every time I tried, probably something to do with the fact that this game was free not too long ago, but there were times where I waited nearly 10 minutes for a lobby to fill, which just isn't fun. And there's nothing to do except just sit there waiting like an asshole. There is a single player mode, sort of. It's a museum mode, where you get to walk around the house from the original movie in first person. While you're doing it, you have to interact with various characters and props from the film. None of them move or talk or anything like that, it's just like an interactive diorama. When you do interact with something, you're told facts about the film and the making of it. This is a really nice touch, and you need to explore to find codes to unlock doors to get deeper into it. I actually did like this, but the controls are pretty slow and clunky. Graphics wise, it's not exactly a looker. I mean, it's fine, but the characters all look as basic as they could do for a PS5 and have some pretty dodgy animation. And even though there are multiple levels to play on in the game, they actually feel like the same levels thanks to reused assets. At first I actually thought they were the same level, but the layout was slightly randomised or you started in different locations to keep things fresh. But nope, they were actually meant to be whole new levels. So yeah, I didn't really have much fun with this. Now I know there are people out there who probably love this type of game and probably play this one every single day. But for me, I just found it slow and boring and it just seemed like a quick cash grab. I only have it because it was free on the PS5 not long ago, but it's not one I plan on playing again. But having said that, if I did have a private lobby with only friends, it might be more enjoyable. But still, it's kind of boring. And now for something completely different. Here is Vertigo, a new take on the Alfred Hitchcock film from 1958, though it also has inspiration from a number of other Hitchcock movies, which is pretty cool. Now, I don't think I've ever seen the Vertigo movie, but I've read that the plot involves a policeman seeing his partner fall to her death, so then he gets a fear of heights and therefore vertigo. He becomes agoraphobic, refusing to leave the house, and his wife then goes to some extreme measures to try and help him snap out of it. Of course, I'm sure there's a lot more to it, but that's the gist. The game here sees you playing as author Ed Miller. You start the game where you've been in a car accident that's killed your father and wife, which is what causes your trauma. You are then visited by a psychologist who's trying to help you with your condition through various therapy sessions. The game here plays exactly like the classic Telltale games. It even has a very similar art style, so the whole thing is more like an interactive movie, which makes sense. Depending on what's happening, you play as a few different characters, usually Ed or the psychiatrist. You do get direct control of the characters at times where you'll be exploring the environment and you can interact with plenty of things in them. Usually for exposition and to make sure you know what the characters are like and that they're actually real people. But this does mean a lot of your objectives involve exciting things like charging your phone, putting rubbish in the bin and stuff like that. I mean, I guess it makes it all relatable, but it's not what I want to do in a video game. However, the meat of the game here are the interactions between characters. There are sort of levels here which are played out as Ed remembering all the things from the past that led up to the accident during his therapy sessions. You get to play through these, and you get to choose how to interact with characters and deal with situations that you're in. What you do changes your relationships with everyone and makes the story adapt as you play. Now, I actually quite like these sorts of games, so I did manage to slog through the housework so I could get to the meat of it all. Relationships with characters all depend on the dialogue you choose and the decisions you make, and you do kind of quickly learn that Ed isn't a particularly likeable character. He's a bit of a dick to everyone. And the worst part here is I can't tell if that was meant to be deliberate or if we're actually meant to kind of like him. I didn't, he was just an arrogant arse. But as the story goes on, there are strange things that happen. Nothing too crazy or paranormal or anything like that, and the themes here are all related to trauma and tragedy. And there were actually some tough decisions and things to do, but I'm deliberately not showing much in case people want to play this one. I don't want to spoil anything. Graphics wise, it looks fine. It's got that cartoony style which does work well for games like this. The character models are good enough, though some of the animation is a bit stiff, especially the lip sync. So while I didn't really enjoy this anywhere near as much as I did the Telltale games like Walking Dead or Jurassic Park, I did have fun with it. If you want another game like those, this will scratch that itch. It took me about 10 hours to play through the whole thing, and I will say that I was kind of ready for it to end by the time it did. But there are some nice touches. Hitchcock fans especially will like the references and probably understand a whole lot more than I did. So yeah, if it looks interesting, maybe give it a go.
Here, maybe this will get you talking.
Here is Terminator Resistance, released for modern consoles. This is the PS4 version. It's another first-person shooter where you are Mr. Jacobs, and this one is actually set in the time where Skynet has taken over and is working on the technology to create the infiltrated Terminators from the first movie. It's a really cool place to set the game as you meet the very first model and all hell breaks loose because you spent months thinking it was an ally, but it turned out to be a Terminator infiltrator getting resistance information for Skynet. Then it hunts you down, so you've got to do the usual thing of destroying it and then getting to Skynet before they can create the time machine to send it back. But we all know how that ends up. Now what surprised me the most about the game is just how damn good it is. Graphically, I'll be honest, it's not the most impressive for the PS4, but it does look good with some great looking environments, enemies and lighting effects. But unfortunately the human characters look a bit ropey and have some very crappy lip sync, which is a shame. But you can kind of tell that this isn't a AAA title, though it's not that far off. As it's all set in the future, and the whole game is a wasteland, and it's actually quite linear, which I do actually kind of like. Each map is a large open area, though there are multiple side missions in each one that you do have to unlock from talking to survivors in your base before you start the mission. Most of these are fetch quests, but they all give you XP, as well as killing enemies, and you'll level up as you play, letting you unlock new skills for your character. I always like these mechanics, and even though it's very basic stuff here, like lockpicking, hacking or getting more health, or letting your weapons do more damage, I did often have trouble deciding what I needed to upgrade, though by the end of the game you pretty much have everything you need. There are a few different enemies in the game, from small scout robots to T-800s to huge hulking mechs that are really hard to put down, and the game does a good job of making you understand that Terminators are a real threat. If you run in guns blazing, it's not going to end well for you as you can't take too many hits. Though later on in the game you do get much more powerful weapons and you can even upgrade them. This does make you really pick and choose your battles though, especially as not all weapons can hurt all enemies, which makes sense. Even for the basic T-800s you need laser or explosive weapons. Regular bullets won't do jack shit, but they can still be useful, as something like a shotgun won't actually hurt them, but do a close range blast and you can knock them off their feet to buy you some time to run away. You'll be doing a lot of sneaking around here, and you have that typical magic vision thing that every game has now that lets you see through walls to see where enemies are, and you will probably use it quite a lot, but it doesn't have an amazing range, so you can't always rely on it. This is actually a nice decision though, and does keep you on your toes. As you explore the levels, you'll find scraps and materials that you can trade for items or use to craft new ones, with more powerful and useful things being available as you upgrade your crafting ability. You can also hack into terminals, doors, gun turrets, and things like that to get entry to new places, as well as have some help by turning Skynet's weapons against its own kind. I really did have a lot of fun playing this game, but it's not perfect. Sometimes the combat doesn't seem really balanced or even consistent. Enemies do have weak spots, but I found that sometimes they'd go down way quicker than others. My biggest problem though are the load times, which are just crazy. It takes forever to load, and every time you die you've got to wait over a minute for it to reload your last checkpoint. and there's times when you're stuck in a battle and will die over and over while you figure out the strategy, wasting loads of time waiting for the damn loading screen to finish. Also, the detection system doesn't always seem quite right. Enemies will sometimes spot you when they really shouldn't, and their suspicion bar continues to rise even when you've gone behind cover. These are minor gripes really though, and overall it is a solid game, that I heard was good, but I didn't think I'd have half as much fun with it as I have done. Most importantly, you can really tell that the devs here are massive fans of the Terminator franchise, as the game is packed with references and nods to the movies, including a doppelganger for Robert Patrick's T-1000 early on in the game, but at this point he's still just a human that's been captured, and it's clear that they're using him as a template for the T-1000. It's a really cool way to do it, and I'd never had any issue exploring every inch of the levels to find these little touches. This really is a must-play for any fan of the Terminator series. It is quite short, and like I mentioned, it is very linear, but it's well worth playing through. Oh, and yeah, you're even rewarded a few times throughout the game by your female companions, if you manage to treat them well enough, that is. This is highly recommended. Of course, you can't talk about Robo-Men without mentioning RoboCop Rogue City. This is also made by Teon, who also made Terminator Resistance, don't you know? And you can really tell. This is another great first-person shooter where you can really tell the developers are huge fans of the source material. So you are Alex Murphy, a cop who was brutally murdered by some criminal scum, only to be brought back as RoboCop. Half man, half machine, what does it mean? What does it mean? If you haven't seen the movies, just go watch them. Well, the first two anyway. They're still really damn good and a hell of a lot more violent than you'd think. The game is set between the movies and starts with RoboCop doing his usual thing of attending crimes. This time a gang has taken up residence in a TV station and is being a pain, so you go sort them out. It soon transpires that there's a new guy in town, imaginatively known as the New Guy. He's pretty formidable though, and the other gangs seem to be scared of him. So being the good law enforcement officer you are, you set out to put him behind bars, or blow his head off. Either works in RoboCop's world. There is more to the story than that, but I don't want to spoil anything. The game is a first-person shooter, and it didn't play out like I thought it would, but not in a bad way. I expected some kind of open-world scenario, but that's not the case here. Instead, you're put into various sandbox locations and have a main objective, but as well as this, you can explore and come across civilians that need help, as well as finding petty crimes to deal with, like people that have parked illegally or someone doing graffiti. It really does a good job of capturing the essence of RoboCop. No crime is too small. Some of these side missions are quite long, with new characters being introduced and proper cutscenes, whereas others are literally just a case of putting a ticket on a window. Completing all the objectives gets you XP, which can be used to upgrade your stats. Things like health, recharge, a dash move, hacking, and so on. You even have dialogue options, and certain levels of upgrades let you say new things that can change the outcome of some missions. But you can choose to just ignore the side missions if you want to and focus on the story. I'm not sure why you do this, but you can. The strange thing is that you can't go back to previous locations though, so if you do miss a mission, or even any of the collectibles that are in the game, like drugs to confiscate or evidence for a crime, all of which also give you XP, then you can't go back to get them. This is a little bit annoying, especially if you're a completionist. If you miss something on the last level, you need to replay the whole game to get back there. Or I guess you could just load an earlier save file. But the main bulk of the game is shooting. And the shooting here is just so damn satisfying. RoboCop is deadly accurate with pretty much any weapon he uses, and thanks to his robo strength he doesn't have to worry about things like recoil. This is such a nice touch and makes you feel invincible, which you're not, by the way. You have RoboCop's classic Auto 9, which fires in bursts and is really damn powerful, and you can even upgrade it with chips that you find to give it things like unlimited ammo, a faster fire rate, more power, and so on. There's other weapons in the game, like shotguns, assault rifles, sniper rifles, grenade launchers, and so on, but I didn't really use them all that much. The Auto 9 is just so damn fun. Though I will say the shotgun is really good to use up close. And speaking of up close, RoboCop can also punch and grab enemies. Punching them will kill most people instantly and sends them flying across the room. Or you can grab them and throw them into the walls or other enemies, and it's just so much fun to do. You really do feel like a powerful Robo-Man when playing this game. And all of this is complemented by some really over-the-top gore that really matches the movies. Enemies explode in a very satisfying way, and I never got tired of killing creeps. Oh, and also the music here is excellent as well, with a really good remix of the RoboCop theme song. Between missions, you go back to the police station where you're debriefed and you deal with some of Murphy's existential crisis of not knowing if he's a man or machine, and you sometimes have to file paperwork as well, but it all suits the game really well. The only thing that is a shame is that there's no driving sections. I would have really liked to be able to hop in the car and drive around at times, but oh well, small gripe. Graphics wise, it looks excellent actually. The world especially is gorgeous with some amazing lighting and incredible amounts of detail everywhere. I will say that you will want to put the game in performance mode on the PS5 though, as on the graphics mode the frame rate does suffer. It does make me quite jealous of people with good PCs. The character models are a little iffy in places though. RoboCop himself looks great, but other characters have some wonky animations, especially with their mouths when they're talking. But considering this isn't a AAA game, it looks fantastic. Overall, this game is just brilliant and one that I highly recommend everyone tries. It's not too long, which is good, but it's an incredibly solid experience that I enjoyed every minute of. And going back to play it again in New Game Plus mode for this review, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to play through the whole thing again. And finally for today, here is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Of course, this is based on the Indiana Jones franchise, but specifically the ones from the 80s and not old Indy. As you all know, Indiana was the dog's name, and he likes to spend his time either teaching kids that old things belong in a museum, and when he's not doing that, he likes nothing more than punching Nazis in the face and whipping things while exploring exotic locations and ancient tombs looking for artifacts. In this game, the titular Great Circle is what you're on the trail of. A series of break-ins at the university you work in lead to a cat mummy being stolen. On your quest to get it back, you uncover a much bigger plot that involves Nazis, the Vatican, and an ancient Egyptians, as well as a fabled race of giants. The game is a first-person action adventure, and much like RoboCop, it captures the feel of the old movies perfectly, really showing that the developers were fans of the original films and have taken their time to make sure this really feels like you're playing a movie. What's cool is that in this game you spend just as much time exploring for secrets, clues and story items as you do fighting the Nazis. In fact, you probably spend less time fighting than anything else, at least I have so far, and that really helps with the immersion. Much like RoboCop, which I will stop comparing it to now as they're not really anything alike. Rather than having a large open world, you have a number of quite large locations, like the university, the Vatican, Egypt, some jungles, and even a mountain range, and there'll be more I'm sure before I get to the end of the game. Each of these locations is pretty large and packed with missions to complete and collectibles to find, and a ton of secret areas. You can either choose to follow the story, or you can do what I did and spend hours and hours in the first area of the Vatican alone trying to find every hidden item and relic. What's nice here though is that you can actually travel between the areas you visited as often as you like, which really helps out if you're stuck or a bit bored of where you are. Just go to a new area. Though I will say that the Vatican area at the start of the game does drag on a fair bit. Indy has a decent enough moveset of running, climbing, jumping and so on, but he can also use his whip, which isn't just to attack, but also to swing from things to get around, to pull levers from a distance and that sort of thing. You can only do it on specific designated things, which is a bit of a shame, but still it's fun when you use it and it's got the classic sounds from the 80s. The combat here is also fun. It's mostly melee, with Indy being pretty good with his fists. You can do combos as well as block and counter enemy attacks. There are a few guns in the game, but these are only really want to be used as a last resort, as they're loud and have very limited ammo. Most of the game is actually played with stealth in mind. You can sneak around most areas, and there's loads of makeshift weapons to pick up. Pretty much anything you can grab, like shovels, bits of wood, tools, etc. These can be used in normal fights, but if you sneak up on enemies, you can pretty much one-hit KO them with any item from behind, and this is what you really want to try to do. You can also find disguises. These are really handy, letting you get into places you wouldn't normally be able to, and it stops everyone immediately attacking you. But you do still have to be careful, as senior officers will soon suss you out if you get too close to them for too long. Following the story missions takes you to the more exciting locations, including crumbling tombs and temples, and this is where you have to solve a bunch of puzzles to progress. Some are simple, but you get a lot of logic puzzles and they can get tricky, though not enough to ruin the pacing of the game. There's a lot of cutscenes here as well, and they all look fantastic. In fact, the game in general just looks incredible. There is a great amount of detail everywhere, and the locations especially look amazing, though I will say I've had some weird slowdown and choppiness, and it's even crashed a couple of times while I've been on the jungle stages. The character models also look really spot on with some great animation. Troy Baker here does the voice of Indy, and it does a pretty good impression of Harrison Ford. You will definitely know it's not really him, but for the most part it's pretty damn close. Now, I feel like I haven't really scratched the surface with telling you about the stuff you can do in this game, but if I did, this segment would go on for way too long. All you need to know really is that this is another brilliant game based on some great movies. It's nice to see these movies get single player experiences that are well made and not just cash grabs. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is another one I highly recommend.
Seems like whatever mechanism controls the door is powered by wire.
So there you go, a bunch of new-ish games based on old-ish movies. What are some other examples? Let me know in the comments below, and if there's enough, I'll see if I can buy. And if there's enough, I'll see if I can do a part 2. I wouldn't really count things like Star Wars though, as they're kind of their own thing anyway. On screen now, you can see where you can follow me, so why not do so? I've got loads of great content for everyone to enjoy. And now, all that's left for me to say is thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.
See that platform? You have to find a way